El Grillo, as every week. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Senor Chaparro. How you doing?
You looking super fresh with that yellow shirt, like shiny and new haircut and stuff.
Kind of
Stepping
mustard
up.
color, mustard color, kind of just for those who like hot dogs with mustard.
That's cool. That's cool. Looking good, man. Looking good. Um, before we go about it, let me just give the usual stuff from this channel. First of all, before we start, please go, guys, and subscribe to Ioan Channel TV, which is Ioan Grillo TV. Ioan Grillo YouTube channel, and also subscribe to mine, which is at Luis Chaparro on YouTube, and go and check out Crash Media, right? Crash Media.
Crash out media, man.
Crash Out Media.
You've been taking aeroplanes today and rushing around the country from like war zones, back to the border, man. I know I can hear your tiredness, but you can roll it, man.
Yeah, I'm a bit tired. Yes, it was three intense days in Tierra Caliente, Michoacan, and then 2 planes and a lot of drinking, a lot of talking, a lot of that stuff. So I'm completely smashed. But yeah, crashoutmedia.com.
Look out for that coverage coming up. But today we've got something special.
What do you have today?
So we had a request from a Narco Report follower, listener, watcher, supporter, Viliam Stefanik 639. And he said this. He said, "Hello, could you make a dictionary of foreign slang words translated to English from Spanish, such as what they call cocaine on the street or kidnapper, etc.?" So from that, we thought we'd go for it and go for a bit of a narco dictionary. We're going to go through a bunch of words selected by myself and El Maestro Luis Chaparro. And we're gonna throw out what we think those words mean, how we understand those words.
Good idea from Viliam. What Viliam
Stefanik?
Stefanik.
Sounds like kind of Germanic. So yeah, big up Viliam there.
Or good stuff, Viliam. Great idea. And let's start with the first word. Let's see if you know this word. I think it's gonna be an easy one, but let's roll it up. Sicario.
Sicario, everyone knows that one now, thanks in some way to the movie Sicario. Originally came from ancient Rome times for these assassins. It was a big word in Colombia, a lot of the time meaning the kind of guys from the ghettos who were hired for a cheap amount of money to go and commit murders. When I first arrived in Mexico in 2000, in fact, they didn't use Sicario as much. They used off of pistolero, gatillero, and Sicario kind of around the mid 2000s kind of surpassed those and became the big word here. So hitman, assassin, and just kind of general foot soldier these days in the drug war.
Is it an Italian word or?
I think Latin. I think it was like sicario or something was originally a Latin word. But if I'm wrong, you can correct that in the comments below.
Yeah, absolutely. I also remember the first time I heard Sicario, because yes, as the good man Grillo pointed out, I think before it was just like maton or like killer or something like that. And then we started using Sicario. Now it's widely known. Good word. Good first one.
Okay, back to you, La Plaza.
Uy, La Plaza. I think it's the turf, right? Which is basically a territory owned or disputed by one or several drug cartels. La Plaza. Also, I think it first came out in the mid 2000s when cartels began picking up the fight between them in different places like Ciudad Juarez and Guerrero, Michoacan, all these other places. And it literally means the like a plaza, right? Like that's also a word in English, because most of the small towns in Mexico, they have the main plaza, right? Like it's a small town. They have the main plaza where everybody gathers and where the local parties take place and that kind of stuff. So it's a very symbolic place in most of the Mexican cities, that if you take over La Plaza, then you basically own the town. So, but the translation, I think it's turf, right?
Yeah, turf is the way. I think it originally came in from like police districts, like as well, like the police ran certain districts, and then you talked about el jefe de plaza, the head of the plaza as well, um, as well. So yeah, who's the head, who's the point man of the drug traffickers, who's going to be the head of the plaza. So that's kind of almost how the cartels were born, coming out of the plaza system. There's another one we could throw in there.
Yeah, interesting one, because also, I mean, basically every single municipality is a plaza, right? I mean, I wouldn't think there are like two plazas on the same municipality, although there can be many plazas in a single state.
Maybe in a big city. So like in when you have Tijuana, you can have the plaza from a certain place to a certain place, and another plaza like different or like kind of sub things there.
Yeah,
but anyway, yeah.
I have one related for you. What is calentar la plaza?
So calentar la plaza, we could translate it as to heat up the turf. And this kind of explains a lot of the violence. And it's a kind of a weird concept to get your head around. But it's something you hear a lot. I think it explains a lot of the violence in Mexico. So basically, what one cartel or organized crime group wants to fuck with another, and they say, okay, or one trafficker wants to fuck with another. So vamos a calentar la plaza. So they create a violent incident or dump bodies or throw grenades or do something which causes a reaction of the authorities, the military, the Marines, police to crack down on that place. So by heating up the other person's turf, they mess up business for them. And you hear a lot of stuff. I mean, people have done, major amounts of bodies being dumped. And they've just been like, calentar la plaza. It's kind of crazy to understand how they do this, but that's is my understanding of what it is.
Absolutely, it's a crazy fucking thing to do, right? Like it's kind of also like a bit childish, to make a mess, so you like the other one will get into trouble. It's a bit childish though.
I guess it can cause some massive economic damage, because like say you have depending on the plaza, you might have some plaza like a small town where it is very, very clear where these narcos houses are, and they can carry on doing all their business. But if there's a big incident there, a big massacre, something which heats up the plaza, then suddenly the Marines, the soldiers come and they have to bust these houses. They know where they are. They bust the houses, so it causes a lot of damage. And that's kind of why it can be, I guess, quite an effective weapon. But the next one for you, cobro de piso.
Cobro de piso. So it's basically an extortion fee. Cobro de piso. It's literally. I mean, it's another weird word, very interesting one, because it literally means the basically charging for the use of like territory of land, of floor. So it's the cartels when they started picking up the war between different cartels and different plazas and different turfs, they began making money by cobrar piso, right? Basically extorting businesses, or even other criminal activities, right? Like if there was another cartel, involved in human smuggling, and then the main cartel will charge a fee, a tax, to let them operate on that activity or on that turf or in that region. But mostly is used for extorting business. They go and they go for the piso, right? I mean, and if you don't pay, of course, well, you get kidnapped, murder, or your business set on fire, which is the most usual things they do for the cobro de piso, right?
Yeah, kind of an alternative tax done by organized crime. And there was even one time where actually in Juarez some years ago when business people said, why should we pay tax to the government if we're basically paying tax to the drug traffickers? So it's kind of it gets further and further. They begin, cobrando the piso of, like you said, human smugglers, prostitution, illegal activities. But then they start cobrando piso of, somebody who sells chewing gum in in a little, little place, a little stall on the sidewalk, and then it becomes everything.
In Juarez, they began, one of the first pesos they started charging was for the guys selling bootleg cigarettes. These cigarettes from China or from India that were not allowed to be sold in the United States. They were being smuggled from the U.S. into Mexico, and then the guys of La Línea or the Barrio Azteca were, charging a fee to sell those cigarettes. If you were selling these sheriff cigarettes or this kind of like ugly brands of cigarettes without permission, they started killing a lot of cigarette sellers in the streets. Juarez used to have a lot of street sellers, cigarette sellers everywhere, mostly downtown. But you need a permission to sell those bootleg cigarettes. Now, let's go to the next one. Very interesting one also. Narcomanta.
So narcomantas, manta meaning blanket. So it's like when you have a blanket with a message written on it. And that's not only blankets, really. Sometimes they have actually print out kind of plastic, signs on kind of plastic sheets. But the original idea is you kind of get a blanket and you write a message. So the message could be something like, you have some bodies dumped and like, this is for you, el teo, attentivamente el Chapo, whatever it's like, because they're a message for one guy from another guy, supposedly signed. Sometimes they're actually using those messages to calentar la plaza, so it's kind of confusing. It's not always exactly who it says it is, but it's that kind of propaganda, and it's freaky. It kind of creates, because it's kind of sign of the narco world invading the kind of regular world. And I saw them very rarely in Mexico City, but one time, remember back in the 2009-10 time, I remember some narco mantas hanging when Beltran Leyva kind of fighting was happening and stuff, and it's kind of freaky, invasive, but they're very, very common in a lot of the wherever there's kind of hardcore cartel violence. They're very common. Yeah.
What was one of the craziest narcomantas you remember? Either for being like kind of like dummy or for being like fucking crazy.
Well, one, I mean, this is going way back, covering Tamaulipas, Nuevo Laredo, back in 2004 to 5 period, the violence first starting, and there was a bunch of maras sent by Chapo and Beltran Leyva against the Zetas, and the Zetas killed them all and piled them up, and they wrote a narcomanta saying, Chapo Guzmán y Beltran Leyva, mándanos más pendejos como estos para que los matamos. Like, send some more idiots like these so we can kill them. It was, the sign.
Holy fuck, yeah. They also, I remember sometimes they will use the narcomantas and leave heads around it, right? With those kind of messages, like keep sending him over and shit, and then a couple of heads around it.
Some brutal stuff. And some weird narcomantas, like, I mean, the Zetas as well, for a time when they were just growing massively, and they had these narcomantas saying, if you're ex-military, don't go to work on a bus. Come here for a good pay and good salary. And so
it was like a recruiting.
Yeah, like actually using narcomantas recruitment campaign. Okay, next one for you, Señor Chaparro, Buchones.
Ooh, Buchones. I think we're moving into the culture of the narcos, right? This is not like, it doesn't belong on the operational aspect of narcos. It's mostly belong on the cultural aspect of the narcos. A buchon is a way to describe a usual narco dressing, right? Which is basically, back in the 90s, it was these Armani shirts with a lot of crazy patterns, golden, red patterns around it. The boots of alligator boots, alligator belt, flashy stuff. I think most recently, a buchon is someone who's usually wearing these hats of JGL, or El Señor de los Gallos, like El Mencho. I recently watched those hats in Michoacán, and driving a beat truck, listening to narco corridos. Right now, one of the signatures of a buchon is the crossed backpack. This cross backpack where they put their guns usually, but a lot of them don't even have a gun there. It's just like have money or documents, whatever. But that's a buchon. It's literally the style of an alleged narco or someone who portrays to be like very in depth, in deep with the narco cultura.
I think it came from Sinaloa, and I believe it came to do with people from the mountains coming down in that neighborhood of Culiacan, was a big narco neighborhood. And something to do with a gravelly voice or something. They came down from the mountains. They had like a kind of grouchy voice, something to do with that. The Buchona, I heard something about that. I find it fascinating in the style, or the Buchon style. It kind of mixes the traditional kind of cowboy stuff, elements of that, with more modern kind of urban stuff. So you get kind of weird mixes of kind of cowboy hats and sneakers and the kind of weird baseball caps and cowboy belts, and kind of funny mixture you have there.
Yeah, and I think it has to do a lot with the pachucos, right? Like they're kind of like sort of like funny, in a sense, where they're like people super properly dressed, but with oversized sweet suits and stuff. And I think that's kind of like the same idea of a buchon, like someone who comes from the campo, from the farms or whatever, and then they try to belong into a city, and they kind of look funny with their way of dressing. But I have I think the first one was the buchones, and then the following is the buchonas. ¿Qué son las buchonas?
Well, buchonas is the girls in this scene, but really particularly narco girlfriends, narco wives. So this is like, real dressed up to the nines. Buchonas. There's a lot of stuff on the internet. I forgot buchonas meaning a lot of plastic surgery, a lot of fake tits, long nails, diamonds in them. Super like looking like kind of crazy, kind of porno stars in some ways, you could say, like or like models. And that same style that kind of you had, like, beauty queens, but real kind of exaggerated out, and that's the kind of crazy buchona style.
That's the buchona. One interesting thing about the buchonas is that now they're messing with their own health, right? Like they go to have these massive operations with cheap doctors, like boob jobs and shit, and there's a lot of buchonas or buchonas wannabe dying in Culiacan most recently.
Now, do you find the buchona style attractive?
Not at all. I mean, it's visually appealing, to be honest. I mean, of course, I turn around my head to look at a buchona, but not my type, man. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, there's some. I mean, the women in Sinaloa, some beautiful women there. The buchona style. I mean, it's kind of crazy sometimes, but they look cool. It's not,
They look cool. Do you have 2 or 3 major examples of a buchona?
Like famous buchonas.
Yeah, like probably like the main one. Which would you say it is?
I mean, like Emma Coronel, like she was kind of
Emma
buchona.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she Emma Coronel is a famous Chapo's last wife. She was, a famous woman of the buchona style, definitely. And then there's a bunch of there was one kind of the Mexican Kim Kardashian. There was one that was like a big kind of Instagram kind of success a few years ago. It's like any excuse in media stories to put photos of them. You get views. So for you, Perico.
Are you calling me Perico? Or that's the next
Perico.
word?
I'm asking you, Perico. What's Perico?
Perico is blow, cocaine. That's that literally means parrot, and I think it's pretty self-descriptive, right? A perico with a big nose, because it's usually someone who snorts a lot of cocaine. So whenever, and I think it's a word that first gained popularity in Colombia, no? Porque I mean, in Mexico, you have a lot of other words for cocaine as well, like pase, well, basically that's it, right? Pase and Perico. That's the ones I recall. But I think Perico is even more used in Colombia. Well, now it's very widely used also in Mexico, but I think it started off in Colombia, no?
Yeah. I never thought about the beak. I mean, Perico, I never, parrot, I never thought about it's the beak and the big nose,
Yeah.
but a big nose to consume a lot of cocaine. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a big nose and it's a lot of stuff to inhale. Okay, I have the next one for you, which is kind of related. I think this one, honestly, I think it's a hard one. I think it's on that list there are two hard ones, and those are for you, of course. MOTA.
Mota, meaning, as the Americans say, marijuana.
Yeah, yeah.
As Eminem said, marijuana is everywhere. The like mota, weed, marijuana. But I think particularly when you think of mota, I think of the kind of old Mexican weed as opposed to the new kind of stylish weed. But you could probably still call it mota, the new kind of stuff. But I think particularly the kind of classic, bog standard Mexican weed.
Yeah. Any idea or any guess why mota? Where that name comes from?
I don't know. Do you know?
No, I have no clue. That's what I thought. That was a hard one. Like I never heard someone with an answer to why mota.
But that's old school. I mean, mota is kind of old school, isn't it? Like I think like going back 1960s at least.
Yeah. That's definitely an old one.
Okay, lavado, meaning perico lavado.
Uy, un lavado, una lavada de perico o un perico lavado. It's a washed out perico, a washed out cocaine. It's basically well, I think the most popular lavados are flavored cocaine. It's a lavada de uva, lavada de fresa, lavada de plátano. So it's like grape flavored, strawberry flavored. And so yeah, it's basically a higher quality, more expensive cocaine. No, I'm not sure it is more pure. I think it is less pure. It's more cut off, but it has flavor on it, and it's in Culiacan or in Sinaloa. I don't see anyone who is in the game who's not using lavada, because the lavada, it's usually more soft on your nose. It has like lesser of a crash down. It doesn't get you like super high, it gets you like middle high, like soft high, and it has flavored, which they use Kool-Aid powder to do that.
Yeah, I think they go through like they get the cocaine powder and they go through another process, and they wash it through this process. So it's funny that it's very popular in Mexico, in Sinaloa, but not popular in the United States, not popular in the markets, but it's big, like you say, in el ambiente, in the scene.
Yeah, but that's true, man. Like that's super interesting. I think can't remember who called me the other day to ask me about la lavada, because they thought it was like something super new, because they a reporter, I think a colleague of us, can't remember who was it, but he thought it was something like super new. Like, have you heard about these new cocaine just hitting the market called lavada or something like that? And I was like, dude, this has been in the game for a good while, but I guess he stumbled upon lavada in the US, which is rare.
Okay. Next one.
I have one for you. This is the most difficult one on the list. Machaca.
So Machaca, I saw it being sold cocaine, Machaca, where it was really badly cut up cocaine, and they called it Machaca, which is also in Sinaloa a kind of way they prepare meat, like Machaca.
Yeah.
So what was kind of good about this name was it was very honest of them, saying like, because they had like, this is the really cut to shit cocaine, but they were using that as well to differentiate and sell original, and like from the brick, del cuadro or something, and so they kind of differentiating it. But that was what it is. Machaca, just cut to shit cocaine.
That's interesting. Yeah, because literally machacar is to smash something, right? Like that's the word in Spanish. Machacar algo, to smash. So I guess that cocaine is already like super smashed, super cut off, and it's not like straight from the brick. Wow, that's a good one. You learn something every day.
Okay, here's one. Levantado or levantar.
Levantar. Levantar is literally means to lift up, right? To lift up someone or something. in Mexico, a levantado, it's a kidnapping, but it's I think the difference between kidnapping and un levantado is that a kidnapping, you will ask ransom for him, right? You will call someone and put a price on his head or whatever. And a levantado is just it's something. It's just the act of literally grabbing someone from the street, from his house, from a vehicle, but then you don't know what's going to come after. They could be lo levantaron para secuestrarlo, so he was lifted up to get kidnapped, or lo levantaron para matarlo, he was lifted up to kill him, or to interrogate him. So it's literally the act of grabbing someone and take him with you, or with a group of narcos or sicarios.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be like not as bad as that. Sometimes, I heard stories about like they levantaron un periodista. They picked up a journalist and took him around a few blocks in the car. Told him, or gave him a warning or something, or gave him a telling off, and then dropped him off. So they can like be picked up. Levantaron now, they can be picked up for some reason, taken to a boss or whatever. But it's a kind of common, and I think there was a Javier Valdez book which they called The Taken. I don't know if that was originally called Levantado or something. I don't know. To take away.
Yeah, it's a weird one because again it leaves you with a lot of interrogants, right? Like if you think about it, a levantado is like someone picked up from whatever, but you don't really know what for or what's going to happen. So it's a really weird one, and it's also a funny one because when you're going to pick up a friend, you can also you also said, even before the narco war, whatever, you'll say like, ahí te levanto, or me puedes levantar, can you pick me up? But now when you say, hey, me levantas, people will get like, no, paso por ti, I'll pick you up, I won't levantarte, right? So it's always a funny conversation with a Mexican when you.
So like narcos change the vocabulary and then make some words now like not be usable. It's like when the Zetas were really big, they kind of took over the letter Zeta of the alphabet. They kind of like reclaimed the letter of the alphabet. Like that was okay.
I got the next one for you. Narco Corrido.
Narco Corrido, I translate as drug ballad. I guess that's kind of standard translation. We could get into some whole episodes there about narco corridos and drug ballads, and I'm sure a lot of the Narco Report watchers are going to know all about those. But often paid on commission. I mean, now narco corridos dominated the corrido form. So when you hear the word corrido, meaning ballad, if you hear it often means narco corrido. And songs telling the stories of narcos. Traditionally, it's a story where somebody dies at the end, a kind of tragic story. Now they've changed, and some of just like boasting songs. And I've got a whole TV series about the El Rey de Corrido, the king of the corrido, Chileno Sanchez, which you can see on VIX. Also, first episode on YouTube, but a 5-episode, very pro series.
Great series produced by Ioan Grillo and written by Ioan Grillo. It's a great show. It's a great series. You can watch it on VIX, VIX, for free. Actually, you don't need the subscription. The thing that's going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of crazy ads if you don't subscribe to the platform. And if you subscribe, then you're going to have it without ads. But you can watch it for free on VIX. And I think to be honest, I think it's the first series that actually goes in deep to what happened with Chalino and goes and talks to the real people who actually knew Chalino and were close to him.
Next word, it's a funny one. Narco Chayo.
Narco Chayo. This is when you know you've been in Mexico for too long, man.
deep into the vocab there, yeah.
So okay, the El Chayo, it's short for chayote, which is a weird fruit. Do you have the name for a chayote in English?
I don't have no idea. I mean, I know what a chayote is now, but I don't know the English. If there is even probably a chayote or something. I don't know.
it's a weird green fruit or vegetable. I don't even know. Like about this size, kind of. Yeah. And that word is used for something like an official bribe, right? Because it's not a bribe. A bribe is a mordida, but it's an official bribe, usually to the press. So I think that's the specific context of a chayote. When an authority, a local politician or someone in office will hand out money to a journalist to stop talking shit about him, or to not cover certain news, or to go and cover certain news and do like a propaganda stuff for a politician. Now, the narco chayo, the narco chayote, it's exactly the same, but where the authority being a narco or a drug cartel, handing out money to a journalist to speak good or bad about another criminal group, or to stop covering certain news that will affect the interest of that group. The relationship between a chayote and a payment, have no fucking clue, man, what they call it a chayote.
Yeah, like someone, here's your little prize. Find out about the original chayotero, meaning a chayotero is somebody who receives a journalist who's basically paid off by the authorities. And now it's common among lovers, among big supporters of President López Obrador, often calling just the regular kind of mainstream press chayoteros. And I remember one chant on one rally was like, "Más youtuberos, menos chayoteros." Like saying like they prefer the pro-AMLO YouTubers rather than the official press who they consider bribed.
Monstruo.
So monstruos are these improvised fighting vehicles, which are like trucks with, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the photos there, trucks with a bunch of armor put in there. Sometimes like, special places to level the guns and fire out, armed up, some crazy real Mad Max stuff there. Yeah. That's the improvised fighting vehicles, or monsters. I call them narco tanks as well. I don't know, they call narco tanks as well. That's what I call them sometimes.
Yeah. So the literal translation is it's a monster, and I think it's because it's fucking monstrous to see that shit, right?
That'd be pretty terrifying if you're driving a car and one of those suddenly storms onto the scene. And that which leads very neatly to the next one for Luis Belico.
Belico, it's also belonging to the narco cultura, like the narco culture, and it literally means I think it means two things. Belico means warlike, someone who is violent, who is willing to go and pick up a gunfight without hesitating, like someone who really likes violence. But it's also now used to describe sort of like a buchon, but that it's more attracted to the arms, right? Someone who's who wears an AK-47 or wears his pistols and whatever, and then you will call him Belico, anda Belico. I think it's now pouring over the mainstream culture, and now you can call someone who's kind of like willing to pick up a fight at the very minimum provocation, like you call him Belico, se puso Belico, like he wants to fight, I think the translation it's warlike, I think.
Yeah, warlike. So differentiate sometimes in the culture between someone who is a guy with guns and a military guy, and someone who's not. Okay, it's Belico. Okay, no, it's Belico, tipo, so you could like differentiate there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now here goes one for you. A Belico usually goes and ejecuta a alguien. Un ejecutado.
Ejecutado is funny because it literally means executed, and to execute, which means to murder, but also it has more implications because by saying, you executed, it means often they've been given the order to execute them. That a judgment has been passed, kind of the express narco justice system where they kind of, okay, what should we do with them? Okay, we're going to give them a death sentence. Interestingly, in Mexico, there is no death penalty officially in Mexico, but you can get single days with like 80 executions happening.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. That is right. In 2010, when the violence started picking up in Juarez, I remember I was working in El Diario, this local newspaper, and we had a meeting with all the reporters and editors and everything to discuss the word ejecutado. Like, should we keep using the word ejecutado because it has a judicial background, or should we stop and just call them straight out murders, un asesinado? And yeah, we decided not to use ejecutado back then. I think the word is being widely used back again in the press, and but I think it's problematic to use the word ejecutado. It kind of like legalizes that assassination, right?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny the way the press do use it, kind of give a certain validity to the narco system of justice, which comes then to a word which I don't know. This is one of your words on the list: arremangar.
Arremangar, dude. This is a good one. This is also when you know that you've been in Sinaloa for too long. Arremangar. It's another word to have a murder, to kill someone. It's a word used. Lo arremangaron means lo mataron, lo asesinaron. They kill him. Arremangar. I don't think it's even a proper word in Spanish, but arremangar, it's to fold your ¿cómo se dice? Como las mangas, your sleeves, right? When you fold your sleeves, that's literally arremangar. Like the sleeves are called mangas. So you when you fold them, you're arremangándote la camisa. But that it was first used to the act of doing that stuff with an AK, charging an AK, which is kind of the same action of folding your sleeves, you know.
Right.
It's kind of fucking weird, man. It's
okay. Pull up your sleeves and you're clocking the gun.
Yeah, exactly. You're literally clocking. So that exactly. So arremangó la pistola. It means that he kind of like cocked the gun.
Cocking the gun. Yeah. Okay.
And then let's go to the next one. This is a great one. This is one of my favorites. Encobijado.
Okay, good. This gets down to the nastier stuff. So when they got a body and they put it in a blanket to cover it with blankets. Cobija is blanket, so to cover something in blankets. Now they get these corpses and they cover them with blankets and like you see these kind of sometimes taped up or with rope and stuff and then dumped on the street. Sometimes they're really kind of mummified, really covered up. I don't know quite the origins of. I mean, it's an act of terror of suddenly these the bodies, after they've murdered and then they're dumping the bodies on the street. But it's not an actual corpse. They're covered in the blanket. Do you know exactly where it comes from and why they put them in the blankets?
I think it was like a non. It's weird to say, but Mexico is this complex. It's like a non-violent act of killing, right? It's not a murder in the streets where you have a shootout out in the streets, but tú levantas a alguien, you pick up someone, then you kill him somewhere else, like in private, in a house or somewhere else. And then you wrap them in a blanket and throw it out on the streets because you're literally dumping the body because you don't give a shit about that body. This is widely perceived right now in Mexico, like this non-violent way of killing someone. I've heard a lot of people saying like we were better with the encobijados than with the ejecutados, right? So people saying like we're probably better with narcos dumping bodies out in the streets in a wrapped in blanket, because also it's an act of like covering the whole fucking violence on his body, right? You wouldn't see him like with the blood or his brains out or bullet holes all over. It's kind of like wrapped up, kind of like that's a body, but it's not gruesome. And also you didn't hear the gunshots out in the street. So
I think one thing though, when I think the Ariana Felix were quite big in beginning of this trend in the 90s. And in some ways you could see the beginning of narco terror, kind of public stuff, like because you're not dumping in Copacados, you can dump bodies out in the countryside, or you can put them in unmarked graves or whatever, but to dump it in kind of like an Copacado in a public road or something is quite an act of terror. Which then comes to another Luis Chaparro word. Enfierrado.
Enfierrado. I think it means two things. Fierro, it's iron, literally, right? It's a tyrant. So enfierrar mostly means someone who's wearing a lot of weapons, right? Alguien que está enfierrado is someone using a lot of weapons. Someone with a huge, I don't know, like a 50 caliber, or like different sorts of guns on him. So anda bien enfierrado. He has a lot of weapons on him. But also means alguien que va muy rápido, someone going too fast. Like iba enfierrado, he was going super fast. I get the iron on using a lot of iron enfierrado. I don't get the speed. Like why someone enfierrado is someone who's super fast. But that's just the way it is.
And fierro can mean gun, fierro.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, you see some of these guys, they really like to have like grenades strapped across their chests and a Pancho Villa style kind of bullet stuff, and just like enfierrados, son bien enfierrados, those types.
And the iron. And he here goes one for you, talking about people enfierrada. Tablear.
Okay, this is kind of nasty. So tablear is to beat somebody or to spank somebody. Some people can use the word. Tablear can mean like a tabla, meaning like a wooden board or a bat. And it's kind of a punishment, but it tends to be a bit of a lower down punishment. Lo tablearon, we give, say lower down, it's still pretty brutal. I remember one priest describing how they gave him he actually went along to help with a kidnapping negotiation, and they said he shouldn't be there, and he was tableado. He was like given a beating, and it was like pretty, you can really mess up someone's kind of lower back, I think, But you see images of that, people like that, sometimes they can pull their trousers, their pants down, and like whack them on the back with a bat. So kind of putting discipline, often brutalizing the public that way, kind of putting these orders. And for a time when the narcos were enforcing COVID 19 lockdowns, and there's some images of like a bat with COVID-19 written on it, with like bat, saying you have to stay in. We're going to order a curfew for everybody else, but not for them.
Yeah, exactly. I think la tabla, it's mostly used as discipline than killing someone or do that kind of stuff. It can be really, really bad. On the last time I was in Culiacan, these guys were showing me one of their most artsy tabla, which was made with a very particular wood and very particular signs over it and stuff. They really love that tabla, and those guys were describing that tabla as the constitution of Culiacan. That's how you respect the laws in Culiacan.
imposing government. Which comes to Alucin.
So an Alucin is literally someone who is hallucinating, right? Someone who's high and thinking out of his fucking mind. And but it's used for someone who dresses up as a buchon but doesn't belong at all to the drug war or any organization or anything like that, or someone whose tales are absolutely ridiculous and exaggerated. Someone who comes to a party and said you know what, man, I just killed 3 men, and there was 17 of them came over to me wearing AK-47, and me with my fucking knife or just my hand pistol killed them, all of them, and that kind of stuff. It's it's an Alucin way, or those guys who portray to belong to a group, singing songs about El Chapo or singing songs about Los Chapitos or El Mayo, but they're literally a school teacher or a farmer in the U.S. and everyone knows it's an Alucin way. He's hallucinating that he is part of a drug cartel, right?
Well, there's a big word in that in English, which is wannabe.
Yeah, exactly. It's a narco wannabe. Yeah.
Narco wannabe.
All right, let's go. Let's go with the next one. Another narco wannabe. What is a narco politico?
Well, narco politico is a big important word. It literally means narco politician, and so you basically have a lot of politicians on the narco payroll. Or these days, even more than that, they kind of cut out the middleman and just have like literal drug trafficking people in positions of power. Some of them are like, these like, local mayors and stuff, and you got, so many people have got like, histories, records, and they're running for positions of power. So basically, a politician who works on behalf of the cartel, Honduran president, Narco Politico. His trial's coming up. Garcia Luna will be a Narco Politico public security secretary convicted of drug trafficking. And various ones around, a lot of them. So a big issue. And then comes to the very last word of this narco dictionary session is, for Luis Chaparro, narco periodista.
Narco periodista. Well, I think it's this is a weird one because it can mean something like, I think it doesn't really mean the same thing as a narco politico, right? It's a journalist that it's actually writing or covering the narco news or the narco beat. So let me give you the main example right now in the world of a narco periodista. It's Ioan Grillo himself. He's the it's usually someone wearing a yellow shirt, with a British accent.
When I went on the Joe Rogan show, they put narco journalists there, and I was cool with that. So I think Luis Chaparro, I think maybe we are in the Society of Narco Journalists, but there's a lot of different. I think it's a very fascinating world of narco journalists, because you've got all kinds of people. You have got some people getting the narco chayo, the real narco journalists who kind of working for the cartel, some sort of like on a local level. And then you've got some of the big famous narco journalists, and obviously rest in peace Javier Valdez was somebody who kind of covered this very, very heavily. We've got Albert Hernandez, I think people could say a narco periodista, who covers this world, and with very, very best-selling books there. And kind of a lot of different people. There's people who have been inside kind of prison, like some of the crime journalists as well, kind of extending out. There's a few people like Seth Ferranti, who was in prison for 20 years for drugs, and then came out and has done kind of narco journalism. So kind of a broad thing there of the world of narco journalists, and some which are more security orientated.
Let me ask you about these. Have you heard the word Alucin narco periodista Alucin? Have you heard that one?
I want to be narco journalist.
Let me switch it a bit. Narco Alucin YouTuber.
Okay, yeah. That we won't go there. We don't like to diss people, but yeah, we don't like to disrespect. But that is the narco dictionary, provided by Ioan Grillo and Luis Chaparro. Own interpretation. If you think we're wrong, if you think we were fucked up, say in the comments. We don't fold with criticism. Just bring it on, or bring on. And that was a great question. This episode. So bring on more questions and bring the love. Subscribe.
Yes. Also,
crashoutmedia.com, Ioan Grillo TV,
and Luis Chaparro at YouTube. And also, it's really cool to have a part 2 of this one. I think there are a lot more words on this narco abecedario, this narco alphabet. If you guys have one, a funny one, a weird one, a word you don't really get, put it down in the comments. I think it's gonna be a good one to have a lot of more.
We could do that one. We could do the some others, do the mafia slang. We might have to bring somebody else on for that one, on board for that. But maybe we could bring a mafia expert to give us the mafia dictionary, or the Jamaican yardie slang. I mean, we can go all kinds of directions with this.
That'll be pretty cool. Yeah. So guys, don't forget, go and subscribe to Ioan Grillo TV, Luis Chaparro as well, and crashoutmedia.com to read some of the latest news. And here goes another ad for that Chalino series at Bix.com. Well, watch it.
Bring the love.
On the next one.